Hey everyone, this is Aeropod and I'm joined by my dog, and today I'm playing Alien Crossfire. If you've never heard of this game, you ought to stick around. It's a very intricate and detailed strategy game, and I've gotten joy out of it since the early 2000s. Today I thought it would be fun to try and use one of the militarily weaker factions, the Morganites, to try and beat up everybody else on the map. So without further ado, let's go. I crash landed in a fantastic spot, which is how I knew I was going to overthink things. I saw mountains right off the bat and thought, yeah, I'm going to take those. So I moved fast, and in doing so, sent my formers, or civilian engineers, right into a fight with some hostile aliens. Some of them lived to work another day. More aliens joined the party, some worms, some artillery, but I killed them quickly so I could get back to expanding my new empire. Making scout patrols with a vengeance, I pushed west, made some solar collectors to get energy, which is used as currency, and made a new base south. Oh, and I found a volcano. The worms couldn't get enough of me, but I proved too much for them and continued west. Meanwhile, my not dead and not resentful formers improved the land, growing farms and making solar collectors. I lost a patrol to the worms, but I was able to make a base right at the edge of the volcano. I then proceeded to lose another patrol to mine worms. But it wasn't all bad news. I built the first ever rover. They're faster and can go further than my scouts, but it was important I keep it safe since they're expensive this early on. So anyways, I sent them to the front lines of my expansion. Almost immediately it had to retreat from a losing fight against the worms, but thankfully we only lost half of the unit staff. Now this is important. It's a key terrain feature called the ruins. All you need to know right now is that each one of those monoliths is incredibly powerful. They can fully heal units and even give them combat experience. So this is something I really want to control. My exploration was going well, and I hadn't encountered any future enemies yet. Back home, I had more formers who were making the land more livable for the colonists. Lots of farms, forests, and solar collectors were made, and a road to connect all of the bases was underway. Everything was going good. So there I was, minding my own business, killing aliens, being killed by aliens, mapping my land, when I get the message. The Peacekeepers, another faction, was taken over and wiped out. Now normally this wouldn't affect me, but if you get wiped out early enough in the game, it'll respawn you somewhere else for a second chance. But I didn't notice this little blue box down here, meaning that the place they escaped to was on my continent. Anyways, it was business as usual for me, sending formers to their deaths. I learned how to make probe teams, which are essentially super spies, and then that's when I noticed his base. In a really bad spot, with no discernible land benefits, right where I wanted to go. I did what anyone would have done and sent my scouts down immediately. While they were marching down to the Peacekeepers, one of my bases finished a secret project, the Human Genome Project. This project would help me greatly to prevent drones or unhappy people from tearing up my bases. Oh, and I forgot to mention I actually had sanctions against me because I had a riot in a base earlier and I ended up stapling their nerves to stop it. So yeah, those sanctions are lifted now. Anyways, my troops finally made it to the peacekeeping territory where they ran into some of the armed and armored peacekeeper troops. Turns out they had made another base, and I spoke with their leader, Brother Law, a humanitarian. He wanted to access my probe team technology and was offering the technology to make watercraft. I didn't want to give him probe teams because I was worried he might spy on me like I was planning to spy on him. I ended up trading him something else, and he gave me the technology to make watercraft. He also shared technology to make weapons and wanted to sign a treaty. He then ended our conversation by asking me to remove my patrols in his territory. I then pulled up the unit designer and designed light and heavy attack rovers, and Lal called me up again to threaten me over having left a scout in his territory, which I took to mean to hurry up and attack. I then built the Merchant Exchange, a secret project which would net me more energy, and then I moved my probe teams towards his territory. I then learned how to be a democracy, and so I instituted democracy for my citizens. My first order of democracy? Stop getting threatened by a humanitarian squatting on my land. At last, my spies crossed into peacekeeping territory. Law complained again, and one of my colonies decided now was a good time to riot. You see, drone riots happen when there are more unhappy workers in a base than happy workers. Riots are a big problem. They decrease any unit morale who's from the base, they stop the base's production, and you'll soon see something much worse can happen. Needless to say, I can't have this go on, so I decided to be nice and give some unhappy workers the day off. I tried to move my probe teams as close to Law's base as I could without being caught by his forces. So while my team in the south was undetected, the peacekeepers had found my north team and had the audacity to interrogate them and return them unharmed. It was also at this time a third drone riot occurred, and I decided it would be wise to give some more workers days off until I could find a more permanent solution. I finally managed to get a probe team to one of Law's bases and infiltrated it. Oh, and also the team that did it disappeared in mysterious circumstances afterwards. While I was finishing roads and infrastructure, Law called me up to complain about trespassing again, unaware that I was inserting another team in while he was on the phone with me. I made contact with Law again, and he traded me his world map. I finally got to see how badly he had been trampled before escaping to my continent, and it was bad. A militaristic faction called the Spartans had completely pushed him off his starting continent. I knew I'd need ships that could shoot, and ships that could carry people that could get off the ships and then shoot. I had a former start preparing a coastal section of my country for a naval base, and I was dealing with some mine worms when I got an interesting message. It seems that the Spartans had also just taken out the Gaians, a green faction. I guessed that they wouldn't get a second chance because too much time had passed since the beginning, so I just assumed that they were out. I was actually becoming pretty excited at the opportunity to fight the Spartans head on. And then a sunspot hit us, knocking out all of our communication with the other faction leaders, which also meant that nobody would hear about it if I invaded Law right now. I quickly instituted a free market in my faction because it's something I had been wanting to do to make money, and proceeded to do final upgrades on my military, finally crossing the border. Now, like I've said before, it's been a while since I played this game, and there's a lot of details that I forget about. I'm not perfect. There is this one major downside about the free market, which I may have forgotten, which is that your police rating in your society tanks. Your citizens get really angry over military deployment outside of your territory, which I literally just did. So now in the middle of the beginning of my attack, I have 1, 2, 3 bases rioting out of 4. I realized what happened immediately and began throwing money at the problem by allocating a whopping 20% of my energy credits to budget for mental health. And I thought that was enough. Thinking that the riots were over, I advanced my troops, surrounding Law to the north and south. Little did I know, I was the one who was about to be invaded. It happened after I ended my turn. I had just finished staging my troops to invade the peacekeepers, and I thought I had dealt with the drones diplomatically. One of the bases got mad enough, revolted, and left my faction. Yep, they left me for the Hive, a communist faction. Look at how my base went from yellow to blue. I did what anyone would do. I briefly panicked and called back the entire main attack force from the peacekeepers to go liberate my base from the Hive. Oh, and I brought back nerve stapling for drones. The Hive has the benefit of free perimeter defenses in all of their bases since they're underground, so now I had to figure out how to bypass their defenses. I had a probe team try to sabotage it, but unfortunately ended up destroying a useful facility instead. This probe team also then mysteriously disappeared as well. With little patience left, I drove my army right up to the city walls and staged for an attack. I grabbed one more probe team to try and disable their perimeter defenses, and to my surprise, it actually worked. I decided to attack immediately, but had to go through the formality of declaring war with the Hive because apparently a base seceding from my faction doesn't constitute war. I immediately lost the first unit that attacked the revolting base, but the garrison defending the base had almost been wiped out completely. The next unit I sent in made short work of him, and I liberated my city from the Hive. And all it cost was me getting into an endless war with a stranger. So on that note, join me next time to see me hastily throw my army back at Law and see what happens. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for part 2.